Today I'm reviewing Battle Over Britain, a small DTP type of game published by Minden Games. It comes in a Ziploc bag and you get the instructions, a player aid, a board that you will see in a minute, and also you get some counters. I also purchased a solitaire module. It had some rules. It had, well, solitaire rules, for example, but I'm not going to tell you the details about the solitaire rules. They're pretty basic. If I tell you how it's done, then you probably will not want to purchase the thing. Because I would just be spoiling the surprise for you. So what's the point? I think that would be a big disservice for the publisher. However, if you played war games before, you can probably figure out by yourself how you play Battle Over Britain in solitaire. If you can't, get the solitaire module. Even if you can figure out the secret of the solitaire procedure, you may still want to purchase this because it adds some counters. The counters that you see there, a mix of the original counter coming in Battle Over Britain and the counters that come in the solitaire expansion. It's nice to have more planes to mix and match. Also, there are extra rules, but other than that, I'm not going to tell you much about the solitaire module. Now, this is the first review that I film from Italy, by the way, in case you're curious where I'm filming from. I wanted to film this review in a nice cafe, in a nice old Italian square, very picturesque, but it was just so much noise, so much people chatting around. There was a guy that was playing guitar. Too much noise. It would have been beautiful visually, but you wouldn't have been able to hear a single thing. So instead I'm filming from a library, from a university library. You don't believe me? That's the kind of thing you can do in Italy. You can film reviews in libraries, in the reading room of the libraries, no less. Back to the game, Battle Over Britain, a game that depicts battles from the Battle of Britain, duels, dogfights. It is played on this board here. You will also need a die, a six-sided die, and you will need a deck of regular playing cards. Players will fight using airplanes represented by these counters. Suppose that we're going to have a duel between a German plane, a German aircraft, and a British one, Spitfire versus Me-1090. The ratings on the airplanes are speed, agility, modifier for front fire. There may be a second number here, neither of these planes have one. A second number here indicating a modifier for rear fire, because these two airplanes have no rear fire. Performance, and this number here is resistance, endurance, health points for planes. That's a funny one. You know what it means. It means that is the type of rating that if it goes down to 0, it means that you are going down yourself in a burst of glory and flames. So you'll keep track of your loss of health points. I like to call them health points. This is really a card-driven game, and very much so. At the beginning of the game, each player receives a hand of cards. The number of the cards is equal to the speed rating. And then, well, people start playing cards in playing turns. Each turn starts with an advantage phase in which you determine which player has advantage. The player that is higher on the display has advantage, so has a better position than the opponent, gets a better sense of what the heck is going on during the dogfight. And that is represented by altitude. These bands represent altitude. The higher you are here on this display, the better, the more altitude you are at. If there's a player that is higher than the opponent, the player has advantage. It may also be that there is no advantage. Suppose that there is an advantage, then the player without the advantage, the disadvantaged player, plays a card face up, and then the other player, after seeing what the other player is doing, gets to play a card too. If neither player has advantage, like in this case, then the two players play cards simultaneously, face down, and then they reveal them simultaneously. After you play your card, you relocate your airplane to the position indicated by the card. You played the 9 of hearts, you go here. You played the 5 of diamonds, you go here. It's pretty self-explanatory. Guess what that is? 3 of hearts. Yes, you got it. If you played a court card or a face card, then you go in the appropriate position, but that also means that you have an opportunity, if you are the disadvantaged player, to break off. This is a special procedure. If there is a break-off attempt, no matter what happens, there is no firing during that turn. So if you're at a disadvantage, at least you're buying some time. You play a face card, you go in that position. At that point, the player with the advantage can respond to that. If the player plays a face card too, the player retains advantage. If otherwise the player does not play a face card, the player that has advantage loses advantage, and so the next turn starts with neither player having advantage. The type of cards that you can play can be modified. If you have better performance rating than the opponent, then it increases the chances of keeping a tail on the opponent. Suppose you have a rating that is by 1 point higher than the opponent is trying to break off, then you can keep following with a face or an ace. +1 means you have an extra opportunity, an extra band. You have 2 points of advantage in your performance on the opponent. You can keep tailing with an ace or a 2 or a face card. The same applies if you're trying to break off and you have an advantage in performance rating over your opponent. If you have a +2, you can try to break off not just with a face card, but with an ace and a 2. Again, when you say a +2, +1, that's simply the differential between the rating of one plane and the other. So break-off attempts may or may not happen. If they happen, as I said, there is no firing. If they do not happen, if the players are simply moving around like crazy, then a fire attempt may happen. Only the player with the advantage may attempt to fire. You may fire or attempt to do so when you have advantage, and also when you are in a column which is of higher value than the one that the opponent has. That is because in order to fire, you will subtract the position. Suppose that this plane is firing over that one, against that one. You subtract the position that the target is at from the position that the attacker is at. 3 minus 1, it is 2. If, when you're done the subtraction, the number is a +1, you can actually fire. If it is 0 or negative, then you can't fire. But in this case, yes, we do have a +2. Now you look at the combat resolution table, you roll 1d6 and you cross-reference the result that you rolled with the advantage. We said that I am a +2, then I use this line here, this row here, I cross-reference with the result of the die, and I have the result the damage they managed to inflict on the opponent. So if you are at position 10, the opponent is a 0, that's a huge advantage right there. It won't happen all that often. There may be modifiers, especially if you're using optional rules. So for example, there's a rule that says that if you have a tail on the opponent that you could fire, but you decide not to, and the next turn you still are in a position to fire, then you fire with a bonus. So you're kind of just taking your time to set up a good attack, but of course you risk of losing the tail before that happens. Suppose you have a very bad hand of cards that you want to get rid of your cards, then what you can do is to yank the stick. This is how it's called. When it is time during a turn to play your card, Instead of playing a card, you declare a yank in the stick. What you do is you jettison a number of cards up to your agility value, and then at the end of your turn, when it is time to draw back up to your full hand size, you simply replenish your hand. You had a hand of 5 cards that you didn't like. You can jettison up to 4. You do so, and at the end you get 4 new cards. In any case, at the end of the turn, you get to draw cards up to your full hand size. But when you yank the stick, you have no idea where you're gonna end up after that maneuver, so you draw a random card from the deck, and that random card tells you where you'll end up being, which may be a very disappointing position for you. There are other rules that apply. For example, there are special situations that may happen based on the yanking the stick situation. Some airplanes may rear fire if they have that value. And there are additional rules, optional rules that you can add. About firing, when you fire against the opponent, you spend a burst. You have to keep track of the number of bursts that you spend because you only have 5. And another optional rule says that you can attempt a long burst. That means if you spend 2 bursts, then you get a bonus when you're rolling on the table. When you roll on the table, the number that you obtain is the number of damage points that you inflict on the opponent. If the result has an asterisk by it, then you inflicted a critical hit. Then you roll on this side of the table, and you determine the additional critical hit damage that you inflicted, which may also be a nice boom, target destroyed. These are the basic ideas. Determine advantage, determine the position of the 2 airplanes. Maybe a break-off attempt will happen, maybe will not take place. Resolve fire if the conditions apply. Replenish hands, repeat until one of the 2 players, boom, is destroyed. It may also happen that players will run out of cards, so that the deck will be exhausted. In that case, the game is a draw. This is the game. As I said, there are optional rules, things that you can add. There are role-playing rules that give more, I guess, narrative depth to the game. Solitaire module, you probably already figured out how you can play this without a solitaire module, but I said you may still consider, if you're purchasing this one, heck, add a couple of bucks and order this one too, so you get the extra stuff and some extra rules and ideas. Battle over Britain. I played this as a solitaire game on the airplane, on the flight as I came to Italy. Perfect size to fit on the little table on the airplane. Did I enjoy it? Somewhat, not too much. There were interesting moments with some tensions, maneuvering around the opponent, trying to find the right position. Was fun in some moments, yes. There were narrative sequences that did emerge from the playing of the cards and moving planes around. However, the game did feel very abstract. I was expecting a minimalist, card-driven war game, but it really felt like a card game with a war theme somehow. So with some degree of war theme that tossed in for good measure. It was okay. It did feel a little too abstract. Recently I played another game by Minden Games, which I enjoyed a lot, and that had a very nice balance between very abstract procedure and somewhat a good degree of theme that emerged from that abstractness. That was a really good, a good way of mixing economy, of combining economy with theme. Economy, I mean design economy. By the way, I'm not even sure I mentioned the game. The game is Salvo. Really enjoyable. I hope for something similar here, and I think that probably the designer attempted to do something of that sort here. The result just seems a little less successful to me. This is a little too much of a simple card game and not much of a war game. At least it didn't give me that feel, not as much as the other game did, not enough to really keep me wanting for more. It was okay. I don't regret the time that I spent playing this game, especially because I was on an airplane. And you know, when you're on an airplane, you watch movies that you wouldn't really watch when you're on the ground. You tend to be more lenient and understanding, the type of thing that you experience. It wasn't bad. It helped me kill a couple of hours on the airplane as I was playing with airplanes. How ironic. I was trying to destroy airplanes. How doubly ironic. But I don't know that I'll be playing this one much in the future. There are better options, including from Minden itself. I think that when I will want a simple, economic, light, semi-action war game, I will go with Salvo. This one, maybe if I'm going to introduce somebody to wargaming and the idea of playing with familiar components such as a deck of cards, maybe that will make me want to pull this one out of the shelf. Otherwise, I don't see myself playing it very much in the future. Battle over Britain, not all that bad, not all that good. It felt a little meh for me. Maybe you'll like it, maybe not, but this is it for today. Marco Arnaldo reporting from Italy about Battle over Britain and a little tiny bit about the Solitaire module expansion.